Welcome back to a further episode of Men's Inner Health with Mark Randall. In this conversation, I wish to explore self-compassion, gratitude, and loving kindness. Where might these come from? And how do we men rewire our brains, our minds, and our thinking around those three topics or areas? In a previous episode, I opened up the conversation around men's heart mindset. To me, the heart is one of the most important areas of our being. Yes, it all relates back to the brain, but from an Eastern philosophy perspective, the heart is known as the heart chakra, the emotional center of us human beings. And unfortunately, over the years of man, we have had to put on this stoic, brave, don't go there, girlfriend process in our minds and in our beings. Now, deep down inside ourselves is a space of loving kindness. It's that deep, unconditional love. Now, we'll have a lot of unconditional love for everybody else close to us, our partners, our children, our family, our friends. But how much loving kindness and self-compassion and gratitude do we give for ourselves? Probably not much. Why is that the case? That has come about over the years of men having to become, from an egotistical perspective, we become very driven, we become very focused oriented. Now, deep down inside us, man, is the sensitive side, and I've mentioned this in previous episodes about our vulnerability. Now, a sensitivity is, it's a real soft side to ourselves, and we men hide it. We pretend it's not there. But it is there. Now, learning to develop more awareness of ourselves, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, we might become more aware of that sensitive side of ourselves, that vulnerable side of ourselves, that it wants to be loved, it wants to care, it wants to do lots of beautiful things for our partners and our children. But for some reason, we don't put ourselves on that scoreboard. You know, how do we men work at reframing our thinking, reframing our sense of self, to come into having a deeper relationship with ourselves on all levels of our psyche? Learning to have gratitude, I mentioned it in a previous episode that, writing 3 gratitude statements a day. When I first started trying that, I didn't have much to, well, I believed I didn't, but with practice, I learnt to rewire some of that old negative thinking. And from a CBT perspective, a therapy perspective, we can get caught up in cognitive distortions, or the mind trap. I call it our mind trap of our 88% negative mindset. Now, learning to rewire that does take time, and it does take practice. You know, learning to have self-compassion for ourselves. You will have compassion for your partner. You'll have compassion for your children. You'll have compassion for your parents, and especially when they're aging. Where's your self-compassion for yourself? You know, maybe that metaphorically, that self-compassion comes from deep down in our hearts, at the depths of our hearts. I call that space the soul mindfulness of being, unconditional love, the inner wisdom, that deep inner wisdom that we do have, but we just get caught up in our overthinking mind trap of our overthinking. It's just incredible. And we lose insight and awareness or contact with that deep inner essence of ourself. That deep inner essence of man is a really beautiful essence. Sometimes I describe that inner essence as like, is that our spirit warrior? You know, the spirit warrior that's been trained from knee-high to grasshopper. How often do we listen to that inner wisdom? How often do we practice allowing self-compassion, beautiful self-compassion thoughts coming in? And not just thoughts, but that heartfelt self-compassion. There are times in life where we need to be more compassionate to ourselves. But it's difficult to have self-compassion from a heartfelt perspective when we're overthinking, overanalyzing time and time again. How do we stop the overanalyzing? How do we stop overthinking? One of the best techniques for that is meditation. And I'll explore more about meditation in coming episodes. One of the key things that meditation provides us is the ability to notice all the subtle nuances that are running around in our psyche. We can learn to notice them. And I think one of the biggest ones that we men need to begin to notice is how harsh and how much internalized anger that we may have at ourselves. It's interesting. It'd be a good exercise to try this. Can you have self-compassion, loving kindness, and gratitude in your being when you're being really hard on yourself? Can we have self-compassion when there's anger there? You know, when there's anger there, how do we have happiness? We can't have both of them in the brain or in the mind at the same time. It just don't work that way. And it's like, yeah, how do we learn to let go or recognize the early warning signs, the intuitive warning signs of when we are potentially feeling this anger, be it internalized anger or external anger? When the internalized anger and the external anger are there, where's your happiness gone? Where's your self-compassion gone? Where's your loving kindness gone? Where's gratitude? Oh, I've got nothing to be grateful of or have gratitude for. It's bugger this. This is all BS. Practicing self-compassion is a really important self-development tool. Learning to bring compassion to all aspects of our psyche. Learning to be compassionate, that is perhaps bringing that deep unconditional love, the softness of that love to ourselves. Yes, we are going to make mistakes. But we men have a lot of those shoulds in our, we should. We should be doing this, we should be doing that. And that's known as aligned with black and white thinking. We either win or we lose. And when we lose, we're a failure. When we lose, we're disappointed with ourselves. Sometimes we are going to make mistakes. And sometimes when I wonder whether we make more mistakes when we've got too many tabs open in that mind. We've got too much on our mind, and you walk into a room, and you've forgotten why you walked into that room. We'll get angry and frustrated with that. Learning to have self-compassion is learning to listen to the deep inner wisdom within ourselves. That deep inner wisdom, that intuitive wisdom, listen to it. Listen to what it's got to say. Open your heart to listen and hear that heartfelt self-compassion that sits deep down in your heart. You give it to your children, you give it to your partner. What's stopping us from giving it to ourselves? Yes, deep down inside ourselves, we do have a sensitive self, known as our vulnerability. Now imagine building that sensitivity into an empowered sensitivity, to empower it with self-compassion, to empower it with loving kindness, to empower it to have more gratitude for what we do have. When you're being critical of yourself, why not just stop? Notice the criticism. That old, it's familiar. Notice it, and I'm not going to muck around, I'm not going to piss around. It will take practice, it will take time to undo the old wiring. Self-compassion is really important. What are the compassionate things that you can do for yourself? If you're showing compassion to your partner, you're showing compassion to your children, how do you do that? What do you let go of in your mind that facilitates that self-compassion coming out to them? What techniques do you use? What are you saying? What are you feeling? How much care do you have for your partner and your children? You have bucket loads of care. You have bucket loads of love for them. Now, developing our loving kindness, and with the loving kindness within ourselves, facilitates more self-compassion, more gratitude for the things that we do have in our lives. And when we can learn the techniques and the strategies, the thought processes, the heartfelt processes we offer our children, how might we stop and learn, hey, why can't I do that? What's stopping me from giving that to myself? Now, this is not a narcissistic or a selfish process. This is self-development. This is self-improvement. Instead of listening to the 88% negative mindset, that old circular mind trap, the cognitive distortions of all our negativities, because what's opposite to those negative issues are positive ones. What can we do differently? Listen to the inner wisdom that's deep down inside yourself. Listen to that intuitive inner wisdom, that intuitive, heartfelt, unconditional love. Our partners can only love us to the best of their ability, and throughout our lives we haven't sometimes been loved enough, and there's always this empty void of can't go there. How much of that void needs your self-compassion? How much does that void need your loving kindness? It probably needs stacks of it. And that's the process of our journey, our inner journey into the deeper parts of our being. Be gentle and enjoy.